straight at it. Ed, stopping ISIS, frankly, killing ISIS is now a financial necessity.
Now, do you want to know what ISIS means? Yes. ISIS means Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They have formed a caliphate, a nation that is worth over $2 billion. Has just begun to unfold. This right here is talking about this army. This army today that's been trained by the United States. We trained them in Jordan to go against the president of Syria. When they came into Iraq, the Iraqi soldiers threw down the weapons and they captured 40,000 weapons of Americans that we left behind. Humvees, 225 halters, which goes 25 miles. These people are trained. They are right now the most well-equipped, trained army in the world, you guys, outside the United States, period. Can you hear what I'm saying? This is what the scripture says will come.
Because the price and supply of oil for the world is at stake. As you just mentioned, ISIS now controls 80,000 barrels of oil a day. That brings them $2 million a day to finance their terror activities. They've got their eye on southern Iraq, which has 3 million barrels of oil a day. So stopping them, keeping them out of southern Iraq is very, very important. And of course, they've got their eye on Saudi Arabia.
Now you see where Fallujah is a city called Babylon.
10 million barrels of oil a day. And of course, they've got their eye on Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia trained these people and at first gave them the money to be where they're at here today. So now they're going to come and they're going to begin to attack Saudi Arabia.
10 million barrels of oil a day. They must be stopped, and it is now a financial necessity that they are stopped.
In the meantime, Stu, how have the oil markets been in recent days and weeks? I mean, beyond oil itself and the threat that you're laying out, just this continued U.S. military action, the potential. General Dempsey saying yesterday, we're going to have to probably go into Syria.
Obama's still on vacation, and today he was back on the golf course. That is, despite being slammed from the left and the right. Democrats and Republicans both slamming him about playing golf yesterday, and that was just minutes after talking to the nation about the beheading of an American trooper.
Do you hear that? Our president has his own Gulf War. He's playing golfing. Why? Scripture says that God will plant it in the leaders' hearts in the last days to fulfill His will, to agree to give their kingdom over to the Antichrist. If France is so much worried about what's happening, why aren't they over there? And where's the European Union? They're on the European Union's doorstep. You know why? Because they are setting themselves up for a one world government, folks.
That's right.
This is what's going to happen. The United States is being removed today as a superpower, aren't we?
Yes.
Do I need to prove that to you? You know it, don't you? Why? Why are we being removed? Because a strong America does not need a world government.
That's right.
What we're going to be facing now is the next superpower is going to be the United Nations. That's what we're facing. It's going to become illegal for anyone, any soldier, to leave their country in the near future unless they're under the United Nations flag. John F. Kennedy signed a document. Write this down. It's called Freedom from War. And the Freedom from War document says this: you must disarm yourself. You must turn yourself over to a United Nations armed forces, folks. And they're going to be called peace seekers. Our first book that we wrote in 1995 predicts Iraq would become the center activity of world terror, and the United Nations would become the platform of the whole world, and become the superpower of the world. We're going to watch this happen. We're watching war taking place today. Listen, I'm just telling you the news. Today, in the Hamas executed 18 people in the streets outside Jerusalem for being on the side of Israel. And they look just like the terrorists in Iraq. Dressed just like them. They were Palestinians.
And former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir. The optics matter, but it also, I mean, it's really hard to be paying a lot of attention to these issues if you're not around.
I think that's an important point, but honestly, I wouldn't mind if the president played golf morning, noon, and night if he cared about the national security of the United States. That's the real problem. He doesn't focus on it, he doesn't understand it, even after 5.5 years of on-the-job training, he still doesn't get it. And that's why this news conference today between Secretary Hagel and General Dempsey is so incredibly contrasted with what the president said yesterday. The Pentagon, as you say, is on full alert, and I don't think the president yet understands the nature of the ISIS threat.
Pentagon's top general saying ISIS cannot be defeated without taking the fight to Syria. General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, says the terror group has virtually erased the border between Iraq and Syria, and that airstrikes in northern Iraq are not enough to stop them. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel also laying out the stakes on the danger posed by ISIS.
They have no standard of decency, of responsible human behavior, and I think the record's pretty clear on that. So yes, they are an imminent threat to every interest we have, whether it's in Iraq or anywhere else.
Switching gears, another 130 US troops arriving in Iraq on what the Pentagon calls a temporary mission. This as ISIS terrorists advance north and refugees flood the Kurdistan border. Here is Mike Baker joining us from Idaho. He's a former CIA covert operations officer. All right, Mike, I want to get right at this. I want ISIS to be defeated. I want them to lose. I want somebody to beat them, hands down beat them. Can somebody do that?
Well, if we stick with our current policy, it's going to have to be somebody else. Because that's not our policy right now. The White House hasn't gone in there with the idea of defeating ISIS, or now they like to refer to it as ISIL, or I've heard someone call it ISIL. We can't even agree on a name for the Islamic State at this point. But they went in, and this is all about just simply two very short-term objectives. It was about trying to halt, at least temporarily, their advance on Erbil in the Kurdish territory, and provide some humanitarian assistance to the Yazidis trapped on the mountaintop. They haven't approached this from, we have a really significant global threat that we have to defeat. And that's the disconnect. The bottom line problem, though, is we can't win this in a political fashion. And that's the way they're approaching it. We're not out right now to defeat ISIS.
Pentagon's top general saying ISIS cannot be defeated without taking the fight to Syria. General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, says the terror group has virtually erased the border between Iraq and Syria, and that airstrikes in northern Iraq are not enough to stop them. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel also laying out the stakes on the danger posed by ISIS.
They have no standard of decency,